There's something hypnotic about a lake at night. The way the moonlight spills across the water like silver paint. The stillness, broken only by the quiet lap of waves against a dock. It's the kind of peace people drive hours for, trading city noise for whispering pines, swapping streetlights for starlight. A lake house feels safe, removed, like nothing bad could possibly find you here. But that's the trick of it, isn't it? Lakes are deeper than they look. And once the sun drops behind the trees, the surface turns black. A mirror you can't see through. You don't know what's moving under there. You don't know what's watching from the tree line. And you don't know how long it's been there, waiting. Sometimes that perfect vacation spot, with the cozy porch and creaky dock, is the last place you'd expect to be in danger. And that's exactly why it's the perfect place for something to happen. Tonight, I have 3 stories, all of them true. The first, about a couple whose summer getaway turned into a desperate night of survival when something came up from the water. The second, about a woman staying alone in a lakeside cabin, who slowly realized she wasn't alone at all. Someone had been watching her for days. And the third, about a group of friends who stumbled across an abandoned boathouse and found a secret under the floorboards that should have stayed buried. So settle in, close your curtains, and just listen, because the sound of water outside your window might be nothing. Or it might be the first sign that you're not as alone as you think. Story 1. The Thing Beneath the Dock. Soft sounds of water lapping. Gentle wind through pine trees. I'll never forget that summer. It was the year Liam and I decided to take a break from everything. Work, friends, the constant noise of the city. We booked a little lake house in northern Minnesota. The kind you find scrolling through endless rental listings at 2 a.m., where the photos are slightly blurry but you can still tell it's charming. When we arrived, it was even better than we'd hoped. The place sat on a slope, facing a wide, still lake. A long, weathered dock stretched out into the water. The boards were soft with age creaking under your feet. You could hear it from the porch, that groan of wood shifting when a breeze passed over the water. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and in the mornings there was this mist that drifted low across the surface, like the lake was still waking up. Across the water you could see a few scattered cabins, most of them dark during the week. Fishermen's boats drifted past every now and then, their engines humming softly before fading into the distance. The first few days were perfect. Coffee on the porch in the mornings, reading in the hammock in the afternoons, swimming off the dock when the sun was high. Liam would sometimes paddle out in the kayak, while I just sat with my toes in the water, letting the world feel small and slow. But on the 4th night, something shifted. It was just past midnight. I couldn't sleep, too much coffee that afternoon, so I stepped outside onto the porch. The moon was bright enough to light the dock, casting that silver glow across the water. It was so still, so silent, that I almost didn't notice it at first. A ripple. Not the quick, darting kind you get from fish. This one was slow, deliberate, like something large was moving just under the surface. It traveled from the far side of the dock toward shore, and I just stood there, leaning on the railing, waiting for whatever it was to break the surface. But nothing did. The ripple stopped right at the edge of the dock. I stared for a minute, shivering slightly in the night air, then told myself it was probably a beaver or a muskrat. I went back inside, forgetting about it until the morning. When we went down to the dock the next day, something caught my eye. On the planks, leading from the very edge where the water met the wood, were footprints. Bare feet. Human. They weren't Liam's, his were bigger. And they weren't mine. They were small, maybe belonging to a teenager or a thin adult. They led from the edge of the dock, across a few planks, and then disappeared into the sand toward the house. "Hey!" I called to Liam, who was unpacking the cooler. "Were you out here late last night?" He glanced up. "No, why?" I pointed. "Look." He came over, squinting at the wet marks. They were still damp, as if they'd been made recently. "That's weird," he muttered. "Probably kids from one of the other cabins messing around." But I didn't remember hearing a boat or voices. That afternoon we met one of the neighbors. She was an older woman with sharp eyes and a sun hat, sitting on her porch stringing fishing lures. When we mentioned we'd been swimming, she gave us this strange look. "Best to stay out of the water after dark," she said. "Things in there don't like to be bothered at night." Liam laughed awkwardly. "What, like leeches?" She just smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel better. You could say that. The next few nights, I couldn't stop checking the dock before bed. Twice, I thought I saw those slow ripples again. Once, I swore I heard something wet slap against the wood, like a hand gripping the edge before letting go. Then, on the 8th night, everything happened at once. It was just after 11 p.m. I was in bed reading, Liam was in the kitchen making tea. That's when I heard the splash. It wasn't the gentle kind from a fish. It was loud, like someone had jumped straight in. I sat up, heart thudding. Liam! But he wasn't in the kitchen anymore. The back door was open. I rushed outside, bare feet slapping against the porch boards, and there he was, halfway down the dock, staring into the water. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "I thought I saw." He didn't get to finish. From the black water beneath him, something surged upward. I didn't see its face, just a flash of pale, wet skin and fingers curling around Liam's ankle. He screamed, grabbing for the railing as it yanked him down. I ran, heart in my throat, and grabbed his arm just as his leg disappeared into the water. Whatever had him was strong, impossibly strong, pulling with short, violent jerks. I pulled back with everything I had, my heels slipping on the wet wood. Liam kicked at it, gasping, and then it let go. He scrambled backward onto the dock, coughing and shaking. I caught a glimpse as it slipped under, a pale, human-like hand vanishing into the dark. We didn't sleep that night. We packed at sunrise and drove away, not even stopping to leave the key. For years, we didn't talk about it. But a few months ago, while cleaning out old boxes, I found a stack of newspapers from the area, probably stuff the rental owner had used for wrapping. One of them had a missing person flyer from the late 70s. The photo was faded, but my stomach turned to ice. The face, the hollow eyes, the sharp cheekbones, looked exactly like the pale shape I'd seen beneath the dock. Story 2. The window across the lake, soft rain in background, distant thunder, slight echo of a narrator's voice. I'd been at the cabin for 3 days when I first noticed the light. I was there alone. My friend Harper had offered me the place for 2 weeks, saying it would be the perfect spot to finally finish my book. She wasn't wrong. The cabin was simple but cozy, tucked between tall pines with a wall of glass facing the lake. From the couch, you could look straight out across the dark water to the opposite shore. The first couple of nights were peaceful. I'd wake with the sun streaming in through those big windows, spend the mornings writing, then take long walks along the shore in the afternoons. By evening, I'd be wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea, the lake outside turning black and still. On the 3rd night, I was halfway through a sentence when something caught my eye. A light. It was faint, a dull yellow glow across the water, where another cabin sat hidden among the trees. It wasn't a steady light, though. It flickered, like someone was moving through the rooms with a flashlight. I stared for a while, trying to figure out what it could be. Maybe a lantern? Maybe they were just looking for something. Eventually it faded, and I went back to writing. The next night it happened again. Same time, around 10 p.m. The faint glow appeared, bobbing slightly, shifting from one side of the cabin to the other. This time it stopped in one spot, and stayed there. I had this strange, irrational feeling that it was pointing directly at me, or rather, that whoever was holding it was standing at a window, looking toward my cabin. I told myself I was imagining things. I even got up and turned off my own lights so I could see better. But when I did, the glow winked out completely. By the 5th night, I was almost expecting it. I'd sit on the couch, pretending to read, waiting for that flicker to appear. And sure enough, it did. Only this time, I thought I saw movement. Not just the light shifting, but a shape passing in front of it. A figure. They were too far away for me to make out details, but I could see the outline of a head, the curve of a shoulder. They stood there for what felt like a full minute before moving away. I remember the hair prickling on the back of my neck. The way my pulse sped up even though I was in a locked cabin with no one around for miles. 2 nights later, it escalated. I'd gone to bed early, the light across the lake still in my mind. Rain had started tapping against the roof, lulling me towards sleep, when I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak from the front porch. I froze, every sense straining. Then came another sound, softer, but closer. Footsteps. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers slick with sweat. I waited, holding my breath, listening. The sound moved toward the porch steps. I slid out of bed, creeping to the living room. The rain had picked up, drumming against the windows. Outside, the porch was empty, but the doormat was wet, water pooling on the wood as if someone had stood there recently. The next day, I called Harper. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "You didn't mention having neighbors across the lake." She hesitated. "Neighbors? Yeah, there's a cabin over there. Light's been on a few nights." There was a pause long enough for my skin to crawl. "That place has been abandoned for 15 years, she said. "No power, no plumbing. No one's been in it for ages." I laughed, but it sounded forced. "Well, maybe someone's squatting." "Maybe," she said, though she didn't sound convinced. "Be careful, okay?" That night, a storm rolled in. Wind shook the trees, and sheets of rain blurred the view across the water. I was about to shut the curtains when I saw it. The light. It wasn't faint this time. It was bright, swinging wildly from side to side like someone was pacing fast. Then it started flashing. Not randomly, in short, sharp bursts. On, off, on, off. Felt intentional. I backed away from the window, heart hammering, and locked the door. I sat in the dark living room, watching the flashes through the rain, until finally, they stopped. I didn't sleep at all. By dawn, I'd packed my bags and was gone. A week later, I was back in the city when Harper called. "You're not gonna believe this," she said. "They found something out by that old cabin." A hiker had come across a makeshift camp hidden in the woods, tarps, empty food cans, and a stack of notebooks. Inside were crude sketches of my cabin and photographs, grainy, black and white shots taken through my windows. The most recent one was of me, sitting on the couch, staring out across the lake. Story 3. The Boathouse. It was supposed to be a lazy summer weekend. Just me, my best friend Daniel, and 3 others from college, Aaron, Luis, and Tasha. We'd rented a big lake house together, one of those old wood and stone places with a wraparound porch and creaky floorboards. The plan was to swim, barbecue, and maybe do a little fishing. The first night was all laughter, cheap beer, and music. But by Saturday morning, we were restless and a little hungover. That's when Daniel suggested exploring the shoreline. "Bet there's old docks and crap from the 70s around here," he said. So we set off, following the curve of the lake through tall grass and mud until we spotted it, about 50 yards ahead, half hidden by leaning willows. A boathouse, or what was left of one. The roof sagged, shingles missing, and the paint had peeled to a dull gray. The doors hung crooked, one barely clinging to its hinges. The whole thing leaned over the water like it was tired of standing. "Looks condemned," Aaron muttered. "Looks awesome," Daniel countered, grinning. We stepped inside. The air was thick, humid, and smelled faintly of rot. The planks beneath our feet groaned with each step. 2 wooden boats sat slumped in the shadows, their hulls eaten through with age. A tangled fishing net hung from a rafter like some giant spiderweb. But what caught my attention were the carvings. They covered the wooden walls, strange, uneven shapes gouged deep into the boards. Circles inside circles, crude stick figures, jagged spirals. Some looked recent, like they'd been cut with fresh force. "Creepy," Tasha said, running her fingers over one. "Wonder what they mean." Luis wrinkled his nose. "You guys smell that?" I did. A faint, sour scent beneath the rot. Something organic. Decay. We were about to leave when Daniel stopped near the far wall. "Hey," he said, crouching down. "Check this out." Under a warped section of floorboards was a trapdoor, small, metal-latched, and locked tight. Erin shook her head immediately. Nope, not touching that. But Daniel was already rummaging through a nearby crate, pulling out a rusted pry bar. Come on, he grinned, wedging it under the latch. Aren't you curious? I wanted to say no. Every nerve in my body was telling me to say no. But before I could, the lock snapped, and Daniel heaved the door open. A wave of damp air rushed up. Beneath the boathouse, black water rippled, lit only by slivers of daylight slipping through the cracked walls. A narrow ladder descended into it. The rungs were slick with algae. Daniel peered down. Looks like it's just water under there. Might be an old storage space. Luis frowned. Storage? In a lake? You're insane. But Daniel was already climbing down. The water came up to his waist. It's cold, he called up, splashing around. I think I feel, wait, there's something here. He bent down, disappearing beneath the surface for a second before popping back up, coughing. That's when the trapdoor slammed shut. Hard. We all jumped. Daniel! Aaron shouted, grabbing the handle. But it wouldn't budge. Something heavy was pressing down from the other side. Hey! Stop screwing around! Luis yelled. From below came a sound I'll never forget. A raw, panicked scream. Water thrashing violently. Something's... Daniel's voice cut off, choked by a gurgling splash. We were all pulling at the door now, shouting his name. When we finally forced it open, the water below was empty. No ripples. No bubbles. Just black, silent water staring back. We called the police. They searched the lake for 3 days. Divers went under the boathouse, dredged the mud, scoured the shoreline. They found nothing. Not Daniel, not even a scrap of clothing. A week later, a local detective called me. He said the boathouse had once belonged to a man named Carl Vinton, a fisherman who'd lived alone on the lake in the 1980s. Vinton was suspected in the disappearances of at least 4 people. But without evidence, he was never arrested. One day, he simply vanished himself. The detective's voice lowered. Locals say the lake keeps what it's given. And sometimes, it gives back. Daniel's body was never recovered. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the ladder, slick with algae. I hear the water rushing up, that sudden slam of wood. His scream cut short, and I wonder if the lake kept him, or if something else did. Outro. Lake houses, on the surface, they're the picture of peace. Wooden decks catching the sun, still water stretching out like glass, and the quiet hum of wind through the pines. But beauty can be a mask. Isolation wraps itself around you out here. The nearest neighbor might be miles away, or the one you think you see might not be there at all. The water, deep, dark, and endless, hides more than fish, and every shoreline has a history. Some of those stories are written in old police reports, some whispered in the corners of bait shops, and some are never told at all. Maybe that's why so many of these places carry a quiet tension under their charm. The same stillness that makes a lake house relaxing can also make it suffocating. The same calm water that lulls you to sleep can swallow you whole without a sound. And then there's the way the lake seems to remember, the way it holds onto things. Think back to what you've heard tonight. The ripples at midnight, the pale hand vanishing beneath the dock, a flickering light in a window that should be empty, a trapdoor leading straight into black water. These aren't just stories. They're warnings in their own way, because sometimes what's beneath the surface isn't meant to be disturbed. So if you ever find yourself on the porch of a lake house after dark, and you see a light flicker across the water where no one should be, or a single ripple moving toward you when the air is still, or a door under a dock you've never noticed before, turn away, lock the door, let the lake keep what it's keeping. Because one day, whether it's a flash of pale skin beneath the waves, or a window watching you from across the water, it might decide to give something back. And when it does, it won't be what you're hoping for. The lake will keep its secrets until it decides to give them back.